What I'm going to do is, Jonathan, just take 10 minutes and just summarize for people what's going on, because most people are really unaware that a massive change is occurring right now that's really good. We don't hear a lot of good news. What am I talking about? Well, I don't know if you know how the Supreme Court works, but they get about 7,500 to 8,000 requests a year for them to take your case. Last year they took 59 cases. Okay, the year before that they took 67. So if you're odd, or out of 15 to 16,000 requests, maybe there's 100 cases taken, I'd like for one of our cases to be taken. That would be a very bad percentage for you. Very difficult to get your case taken. We didn't just have one case taken. We won 4 cases at the Supreme Court in 13 months. Cases are what I would call landmark religious liberty cases. I mean, literally changing 50 years of case law. Things that the country has been used to for a long time are no longer true as far as how you approach a lot of these issues where the government was really hostile to religion. So what am I talking about? The first case was CARSON versus Makin. This is out of Maine. Maine, for 130 years, has had the same system where they let the parents pick where they want to take their tax money. Most of their school districts don't have public schools. So they've always let people pick. You pick any school, private or public. And that's what they did for about 100 years. Until somebody said, no, let's add one provision. And that's, you can't pick any school that's religious to go to private schools, public schools. Well, we filed a lawsuit, said that was unconstitutional. And we won at the Supreme Court 6-3, that from now on, in every state, and every school choice program, whether it's a city program like in Milwaukee, or whether it's a state program or wherever, from now on, when there's school choice, parents have to be allowed to pick a religious school amongst their choices. They know what's best for their kids, and it's discrimination to not allow that. So that's a huge win. But that's even bigger than people know, because what they did in the opinion is they said, look, the basis of our decision is not on the education. What it's on is, anytime that there's a government program that provides benefits in a generalized fashion, you can never exclude the recipients because they're religious or they're doing it in a religious way. Think of what that means for like Teen Challenge and drug rehab. Think of what it means for homeless missions in your local community. The church, all these groups can now participate fully and do it in accordance with their beliefs. Big, big victory. Second, this summer, there's a case called Gerald Groff versus the United States Postal Service. Gerald was on the mission field for many years, decided he would get a job where he didn't have to work on the Sabbath, because he had very strong views about not working on the Sabbath on Sunday. And so he picked the U.S. Postal Service. Well, that worked great until they started working with Amazon to deliver on Sunday. And then they told him, well, you're going to have to deliver on Sunday. He said, look, I'll work double shifts, I'll work every holiday, but I can't work on Sunday. Well, he asked them to accommodate him under federal law. There's requirements for religious accommodation. They refused, they fired him. Well, this summer, we won 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court. And the reason Gerald was undergoing what he was undergoing is because for 50 years, we've had a Supreme Court decision that mangled the law on purpose, in my opinion, and took away religious freedom from everybody in the workplace. Well, guess what? This decision, 9-0, just restored that protection for every American. Think of what this means if people are fired for the wrong pronoun use, or they're told if they don't go to the gay pride parade with the company, they're fired. They had no protection. Now they have full protection. This is going to affect every person who works. All of our kids are going to work. All of our grandkids are going to work. This is a huge shift. The third case was a case you probably heard about, the Coach Kennedy case. Coach was in the Marines for 20 years, got out as a coach, made a promise to God that after every game, the first thing he would do is kids go to the center of the field and everybody was talking and making reservations for dinner, and he would go to a knee by himself and say a 20-second, 30-second prayer, really silently, thanking God for the privilege of coaching these young men. And so that's what he did for 7 years. Until they said, if you go to your knee again, we're going to fire you. Well, coach made a promise to God, so he went to a knee, and they fired him. And for 7 years, he lost every step of the way. Unfortunately for Coach, he lived in the Seattle area. And then you go to the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, so not exactly the venues you want. But we eventually made it to the Supreme Court. And again, most of you know, 6-3, we won a Supreme Court decision, and Coach has every right, and he did, to go back to the center of the field to pray after the game, that every coach in the country has now religious freedom to live out their faith, never to coerce anybody, which Coach, there was no evidence he ever forced anybody to do anything, because he didn't believe in that. But this is a massive win. Now, what people don't know, though, they think, yeah, Coach gets to pray. You know, I'm watching people pray after football games now. If you watch, you're seeing, you know, coaches join the kids, whatever any individual wants to do is change. It's so much bigger than that. Because what happened within the decision was there's a famous case called Lemon. And this goes back 50 years ago. We have an establishment clause because our founders didn't want us to establish a national church. And didn't want to tell people you have to give to that church. And so they put it in a no establishment clause. Well, 50 years ago in the Lemon case, they said, no, we think it means a lot more than that. We think it means that wherever government is, religion can't be. We think it means that normally you can't bring lawsuits because you're offended, but you can bring a lawsuit if you're offended by religion. And so for 50 years, we've watched, you know, nativity scenes come down, menorahs come down around Hanukkah, Ten Commandments pushed in the closet. You know, anytime there's a prayer at school by somebody, it's like a fire has occurred at school. Why? Because any of these things are in the Constitution? No, because of the Lemon case, which has been cited 7,000 times in the last 50 years to knock down religious expression. Well, about 4 years ago, we had a case in the Supreme Court, the Mojave Desert Cross, the Bladensburg Cross case out of D.C. It was a memorial that was put up almost 100 years ago on moms who lost their sons in World War I. And it sat there for those many years until the American Humanists brought a lawsuit saying, you can't have this violates Lemon. And believe it or not, at the Federal Court of Appeals, they said, why don't we just cut the arms off the cross? That way nobody will be offended and we don't have to tear it down. Well, we went to the Supreme Court, and we said, you know, I think Lemon is really established. It's got 7,000 citations, but it's time to go after Lemon. So we spent 90% of our briefs on, you got to get rid of Lemon, even though the odds are not good. Well, something interesting happened. The Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that cross was going to stay, and it's still there in Bladensburg, Maryland. That Veterans Memorial is not going to be touched in the future. But more importantly, 5-4, the court said, we're not following Lemon in this case. Now, they didn't reverse it, but it was a crack in the armor. So we got to the Coach Kennedy case, and we thought, you know, there's never been a case in the history of the country on the rights of teachers or coaches with regard to their faith at school. This is going to affect a lot of people, millions and millions of coaches, teachers, public employees. And so if we push for the get rid of Lemon argument, that's like going for a grand slam when all you need is a single to win the game. And so we didn't want to risk it. So we didn't. It was in the arguments, but it wasn't our heavy argument. Midway through the oral argument, out of nowhere, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch start saying, I think it's time we get rid of Lemon. And sure enough, the decision comes down. I'm sitting next to Coach Kennedy, and he's like, did I win? And we're like, yes, we're reading. And we're reading along, and it says Lemon's dead. 50 years. Those crosses went down and go back up. Everywhere that the Ten Commandments in the closet comes back out. If you're told you can't have a nativity scene in your community, yes you can. You can't have a menorah, yes you can. And it's going to be hard because people have been trained for 50 years you can't do these things. And you can. It's okay to be the country that we are. We don't ever want the government coercing anybody to do anything. But we have the freedom. We don't ban religious imagery across our country anymore. This is over. And so this is a big deal. Let me mention before I forget, and I'm going to talk about why this connects so heavily to Texas values. Most of you, I know a lot of you, are already getting the information, but I mean, we've got like 5 more cases right now at the Federal Court of Appeals. We'll probably have some more big Supreme Court cases. We're happy to put you on the list where you can see the cases. Every Friday, we'll talk about what's going on with the 4 biggest cases, so you can pray, so you can spread the word. The reason this is so crucial is because we just won. All these freedoms are now available that people didn't know about. But you know what? If we don't pass these things into law, if we don't do, I mean, this is going to be a really crucial time for Texas values. There are 1,000 new opportunities for them to pass legislation that dramatically impacts your lives, your kids' lives, your grandkids' lives with regard to religious freedom. And so this is, you know, what I'm about to say, some people might question, but I'm telling you it's absolutely true. Every American alive right now has more religious freedom than they've ever had in their lifetime in light of what's just happened over the last few years. But we're just at the beginning of this. I mean, we're going to have more of these victories. And it's going to be crucial. There's an index that we do with top intellectuals that's called, and they go by all the standards, peer-reviewed studies, everything. They just look at the states and which states have more laws to protect religious freedom in their state. That simple question. Just looking at the laws, who has more laws? Guess what Texas is right now? It's number 25 of the states. There are tremendous opportunities for advances in the state on religious freedom. And if Texas Values doesn't lead on them, I don't think anybody else is going to lead on them. So it's all going to be based upon what Jonathan and what the staff do here. So this is an exciting time. I couldn't encourage you more to get behind this. It's a great group. And the timing is so unique in the history of our country. So thanks for giving me a few minutes, Jonathan.